George Best, you need no introduction to a world audience, never mind a Northern Ireland one. The first football superstar, the fifth Beatle, and the subject of countless stories in the press. Are they still interested in everything you do?
They are, mostly, unfortunately. Yeah. When I married Alex, I did explain to her that sometimes it was going to be difficult. And we've been married about 15 months now. And in that time, almost daily, we get calls from the press about stories that we split up, she's moved out. The last one was that I'd had a fight with her and broken her jaw. So we still have hassle. But that's part of my life, you know. I've got to handle it. I can handle it. I find it a little bit easier than, say, my friends and family, because they're not used to it, mostly. To me, I just take it as it comes, but it's difficult to handle, because they really are evil. And they still park outside our home in Chelsea, sometimes 24 hours a day, looking for whatever, because the stories coming in constantly. So it's still a battle with them.
So what is life like at the moment? You're 50, you know. I mean...
It's brilliant. It really is. I'm married to a lovely lady, and I was a little bit dubious when we first met because of the age difference. Alex is only 24, but it's worked out really well. Her mum and dad, who were the ones I was worried about, have been brilliant, and we've become friends, her parents and I, and which is nice. We've just been on holiday together. Work-wise, I think the nice thing about my life at the moment is that I'm very, very busy. I mean, I love reading the tabloids again when they call me a has-been. And I think of these idiots who are parked outside my house 24 hours a day, earning £100 a week. And I'm flying off to New Zealand in a couple of weeks to earn probably 10 times more than they earn a year. So the nice thing is that life is different every day. I don't know from one day to the next what I'm going to do, which suits me.
Are you hurt when the tabloids say things like has-been?
Well, you are hurt. I mean, you'd be an idiot not to be hurt. But the nice thing is that how can someone who's never done anything call me a has-been? I did it all at the highest level for a long time. Maybe not long enough in some people's minds. But I had 11 years at one of the greatest football clubs in the world and achieved almost everything that was possible for a footballer to achieve in 11 years. So I sometimes laugh, you know, at them a little bit, but it hurts. Any criticism you have hurts. I don't care who you are, and everyone wants to be spoken nicely of, but because it's me, it doesn't always work that way.
What's your earliest memory of kind of home and Belfast? Your very earliest memory?
Well, the first year I lived with my grandmother in Donard Street, and that's
Why was that? Why was that?
I don't know why. I've never ever asked my mum or dad why. We were there for the year. But my first memory was kicking a ball around outside my grandmother's house when I was about 12 months old. Then we moved to the Craigie estate. And my dad's still there, 49 years he's been there. So my earliest memory was kicking a ball around the streets outside my grandmother's.
And what other memories do you have? I mean,
all good, all good. Funny enough, I read a piece again talking about the press recently about some psychologist or psychiatrist or something talking about my miserable childhood, which led to my problems later on. I had the happiest childhood of all time. I mean, we were such a close family. Didn't have a lot of money, but we all stuck together and scraped through. And you know, kicking a ball around was all I wanted to do. And
was there anybody else in your family, or had there been any very sporting person in the family before?
Well, my dad played amateur football. Apparently was a bit of a hard man for a little guy. And some of his pals tell me that he kicked everybody. And if I'd have played against him, he'd have probably kicked me. My mum was more the sporty. She played hockey and was very, very good at it. So she was the one was more sporting probably than my dad.
So you were a close family? Very,
very close, yeah. And we still are, you know. My mum's gone now. I see my dad every time I come home, and my sisters. And they all get together once a week at my dad's home, as many as can make it, because they're multiplying. Every time I come back, there seems to be another one. But we're still very, very close.
Were you a religious family?
Early days, yeah. My grandfather on my mother's side, he was the one who made us. We had to go to Sunday school. We had to go to church. We met at my granddad's every Sunday, and the kids had to go off. And he was very, very strict. We weren't allowed to watch television on a Sunday. But he went up to have a nap on Sunday afternoon, so the kids all huddled around the telly and kept it down low. And one of us had to sit, we had to be a sentinel at the bottom of the stairs. So when he got up to come downstairs, the telly went off. So he was the one that pushed it. I was named after him, actually. So he was the one that was the religious one. So we were, one of my sisters is very religious, Carol. She's the one that tells me off for not, when I step out of line.
So were you were Presbyterians or?
Yeah, Presbyterian, yeah.
And quite strict then in the early years.
Yeah, pretty strict. Yeah, we had to do what we were told, and at home as well. You know, if you stepped out of line, you get a scalp across the back of the legs. That was Mum's job. Dad never touched me, but Mum, she used to hate doing it because I was such a skinny little kid. She used to hurt herself when she gave me a smack, so she stopped doing it.
And all those years later, you know, when you were, you know, drinking or crashing cars or going out with women or gambling, did you have any sense of Presbyterian guilt or
Yeah, of course, yeah, because when I was getting in trouble, I thought, you know, the family are picking up the newspapers and reading all this stuff, and it's hurting them. Yeah, so I had to pick up the phone and call them and say it's not as bad as it looks. Yeah, it was a bit of madness for a few years, and it was. I thought it was normal, but obviously it wasn't.
But I mean, did you think of? I mean, you went to Sunday school when you were a child. You know, you had a religious grandfather. You didn't watch television Sunday. I mean, did you think what you were doing was wrong, or was it just guilt about your parents worrying?
I knew it was wrong, obviously. Yeah, and also the guilt because it was hurting the people who were closest to me and who'd brought me up in a proper way and taught me the value of things. So I knew every time I did something wrong, it was hurting them. So the guilt was there, yeah. And when my mum died, the guilt stayed for a long, long time because I thought it was my fault.
Why?
Which is crazy. Well, because I thought, you know, I'd left home, and if I'd have been there, it might have been different. She might still have been around. I didn't write as often as I should. I didn't call home as often as I should. So for a long time, I felt guilt over that. I don't anymore because I know that I couldn't have changed it.
When did she die?
You know, I blocked it out. I don't know. I know I was in America. I don't even know what year because it's one of those things I blocked out of my mind because I didn't want to think about it for a long, long time. But I was living in the States. I was married to my first wife, Angie, and I remember coming home for it, and it was a bad time.
For the funeral?
Yeah, yeah. But because she was such a lovely person, you know, it was difficult to take for a long, long time.
I suppose when you went away, of course, you were very young, and she presumably would have missed you. I mean, what was that like, leaving at a young age?
It was hard because you know I'd never been away from home before. The furthest I'd been to Bangor when I was a kid, and that was an adventure for us. And so to go over to Manchester to this great club that everybody wanted to play for was frightening for a kid. And I found it difficult. I mean, I only stayed a day and came home. And then when I went back a couple of weeks later and stayed, I used to write home almost every day. And
Did you phone anymore?
No, we couldn't afford a phone in those days. So and I used to write regularly. And if I played on a Saturday, I used to insist that I came home, fly home on the Saturday night so I could spend the weekend with the folks. But then the letters became, you know, less and less, and the trips home became less and less because by that time I'd gotten the first team, you know, and we were playing in Europe, we were traveling all the time, we were on tour. So I sort of, you know, the gap gathered rapidly.
Did you always know? I mean, you talk about your earliest memory being actually as a toddler. I've seen a photograph. You're a toddler. You're kicking a football. You could be, you know, 21 years later, the photograph looks just the same. But did you know that it would be football? I mean, when did you realize you were extraordinary?
I didn't know until I actually got in the first team at United.
And you were then what, 16,
17 when I got in, yeah. When I was a kid playing at school and for Craigie Boys Club, I went to Leicestershire and played for the school as well. I was always a little bit better than the other kids, and I was the one that scored the goals. So I was always a little bit better than the other kids, but I always dreamt of being a footballer, but never ever thought that I would make it. And I'd actually taken examinations. My dad had decided I was going to go into the printing trade because he thought that was something that would always be there. And I actually had passed my final exams to become a printer when the offer to go to Manchester came up. And for 2 years, I played in the junior teams, but there were better players than me around. So having come from being the best player here, I'd gone over there, and I was probably one of the worst, or I thought I was. And then when I got in the first team at 17, my first game, I found it so easy. I think then I realised that maybe I had a chance, because I was doing exactly the same thing as I'd been doing at Craigie Boys Club, playing in front of 54,000 at Old Trafford. Yeah, and I think then that I didn't realise as well that Sir Matt Busby had decided when I was 15 that there was something special.
Extraordinary. Yeah. But you mentioned Liston Shara Secondary School, but you passed the 11 plus. Did you ever feel that you could have gone off in an entirely different direction?
I could have done. Yeah, it's amazing how things in life, little incidents change the direction.
So what changed?
Because I passed my 11 plus. I went to Grosvenor High School, and they played rugby, and I didn't want to play rugby, so I started missing lessons and disappearing in afternoons. And
so football was really important.
Yeah, I mean it was really the only thing I wanted to do, and I didn't. So they gave me a choice at Grosvenor of dropping down a couple of classes or whatever they called them in those days, or going to Liston Shara. And Liston Shara was where all my pals were from the estate. So I said, well, I'll go there. So I went there, and I remember the first day I went in, I think it was an art class, and all the boys were huddled in the corner, and they were picking a football team for that weekend, and they asked me if I wanted to play, and I said, yeah, all right, I'll have a go. And that was it. So if I'd have stayed at Grosvenor, I might not ever have gone to Manchester.
When you were growing up and going to Liston Shara, were you aware of Catholics and Protestants and sectarian differences and so on?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when we were kids growing up, we used to throw stones at each other and call each other names, but nothing like it became. And when I went to Grosvenor, quite a few times I was kept behind for mitching off. So I had to go through a Catholic area to get home. Of course, walking through a Catholic area with my school uniform on, they knew what I was. And the number of times I had to run the gauntlet. I had to get the timing right, just when the bus was just arriving, and there was a days where you could jump off and on, like it was open. And that was...
Did that affect your decision to leave Grosvenor, in fact?
No, it didn't. No, it was purely that I wanted to play football. Yeah.
But you wrote in your autobiography, in fact, that when you went to Manchester United, in fact, people had said to you, but that's a Catholic team. Yeah,
that was amazing, because I think Manchester United were thought to be a Catholic side because of Sir Matt, who was very, very deeply religious. And people thought that he only wanted to sign Catholic players. And it wasn't true. I think if you look over the years, it was probably 50-50. Sir Matt didn't care what you were, what shape, colour, size, or religion. If you were good enough, you were there. And that's the way he looked at it, and that's the way it should be.
He was very important to you.
He was, yeah. When I went to his funeral, when he died, only the close members of the family went to the actual burial. We went to the service, and they asked me if I would go, because the family, Sir Matt did ask if I would go, which was a little bit special.
And you like another son to him, do you think?
Yeah, well, when I was there, his family, all of his family, one by one, as we were leaving the graveside, come up to me and said, he thought you were another one of his sons. And it's a hell of a compliment coming from a man who was a great, great man. Not only a great manager, but a great man. He had a special quality. When he walked in a room, you knew you were in the presence of somebody a little bit special.
You loved him?
Yeah, dearly. Yeah.
Was he a second father?
Yeah, because I put him through a lot of hassle. And he always stuck by me. Even when I left the club. I remember once I was in Spain, and I had a thrombosis while I was in Spain, and I flew back, and it formed in the base of my leg, and my doctor told me if it had to come up, obviously, I could have died. And I remember being put in the hospital where I was in for a week, and he was the first person came to see me. And he came in, stayed for half an hour, and when he left, he walked out the door and he popped his head back in, and he said, it's about time you started playing again. And so he's a very special man.
Do you think he understood you?
I think he did, yeah, because I think I was the first that had ever gone through the sort of thing that people like Paul Gascoigne are going through today. They'd never seen a footballer with long hair, and they started the Fifth Beatle stuff, and I mean, I was in pop magazines and fashion magazines as much as I was in football magazines. It was something, and for a kid from Belfast, it was a little bit hard to handle, and I found it very, very difficult at getting towards the end. And I think he understood that. And,
did he protect you in any way from any of it, do you think?
He tried. I mean, little things. When I built my house, he told me to move out of it because he wanted me to stay in digs with Mrs. Fullaway, who looked after me. And he tried. Then he told me to move in with Paddy Crerand, who was my sort of minder on the field and off it. Yeah, so he tried things like that, but it was difficult, because he had his own life to live, so he couldn't follow me around 24 hours a day and make sure I was doing the right things. He also knew as well what I was doing 24 hours a day.
Why? How?
I don't know how he knew, but he'd come in his office. I spent more time in his office than he did. It was he'd call me in and he'd say, I believe you were in this Brown Cow last night, this pub, the Brown Cow, until 3 o'clock this morning. And I said, boss, it's the Brown Bull, not the Brown Cow. So he said, I don't care what it is, you can't go in places until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I never ever found out how he knew, but he knew everything.
But he wouldn't make you captain.
Yeah, there was talk that if he made me captain towards the end, because the club had started dropping after winning the European Cup, and I was still only 26. And a lot of people suggested that maybe if I was made captain, it might be giving me that little bit more responsibility. But the team, just to be honest, just wasn't good enough. We'd won the European Cup in '68, and 4 years later we're relegated. It was, yeah, to say it was a decline was a, but poor old Sermat was getting towards the end. He was, retiring. A lot of players were finishing at the same time. A lot of great players as well. So it was a hard time, and I took the easy option. I disappeared and decided not to play anymore. The problem was I'd stopped enjoying the football. That's basically what it was. And people couldn't understand. I mean, I was saying that if I was going to say to someone, I'd say, I'm playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world. I'm getting well paid. I've got everything I want. I've got the cars. I've got the money. I'm playing for Manchester United. But I wasn't happy because we weren't winning. And I wasn't used to not winning and not being first.
Winning's important.
Yeah. Funny enough, I told Callum, I went to see him once in the States, and he had just started doing karate. And I went to watch him in a training session, and there was one kid who was better than him. And it really annoyed him. And I must have been getting smart in my old age, and I had to sit him down. He was almost crying because this kid was better than him at the things they were doing. And I had to say to him, there's nothing wrong with being second. And yet I was the one that thought that, there was a lot wrong in being second. But I realized now that you can't win at everything.
What kind of a father are you?
I hope I'm a good one. When Callum was here the last time, we had a little bit of a disagreement over something. And the end of the argument, he just said, I love you, Dad. So I must be doing something right.
You said that to your own father?
Yeah. Oh, he knows.
And your mother?
And my mother, yeah. Tell him all the time. I took my dad out. Every time I come home, I take him out for dinner, and he knows. Even if he don't say it all the time, he knows.
I wondered if, there was any sense in which, all those years ago, that you felt that there were things that you should have said or could have said at the time when you were having all the problems with football. If you'd been able to kind of...
Yeah, if I'd have been able to say it, but I didn't. I made the mistake of trying to sort my own problems out, and you just can't. You need someone to help you. And when I went through the treatment, but it's difficult because when I went through the treatments for alcoholism, someone told me, everyone needs a crutch to lean on, but it's putting pressure on the person you pick as the crutch, because what happens the day the crutch disappears, you're in even more serious trouble.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I try to do it without anybody. Some people find one or two people they can lean on and talk to. I try to do it my own, which created more problems than it would have done if I'd have found a couple of people to talk to.
What kind of a relationship do you have with drink now?
I'm in a situation now, if I feel like a drink, I have one, and if I don't, I don't. I mean, it's as simple as that. I spoke to a friend of mine many years ago when I was having real serious problems with it. And he was a doctor, and he said, it's one of those things, there's no solution to it. Some people find a solution, but the problem with drink is it's always there. It's not going to go away. But what you have to do is decide whether it's going to handle you or you're going to handle it. And I think, to a large degree, I handle it more than it handles me today. And I had a bet with Alex recently that I'd go a year without a drink, which I've done on occasions, but I think I lasted about 2 months and went out and had a drink to celebrate lasting 2 months, and and then went on a bender for a week. But I get up in the morning. Sometimes I feel like a drink, and other times I couldn't touch it. So that's the way I handle it. Whether it's right or wrong, a lot of people say it's not the way to do it. I mean, but I've tried everything else. I tried the implant with the with the anti-abuse. I've been in hospital 3 times for treatment. I've tried AA, but the AA was a little bit of a problem. I found it difficult to be anonymous, so it was a little bit of a problem. So none of them worked. So the way I'm trying to handle it today is the way that's working best for me. And the nice thing is that in the old days, I was not turning up for almost 99% of the stuff I was supposed to turn up for. The difference is today, I turn up for 99%. There's always the 1% that I miss. And again, the press love all that. They don't talk about the 99 work days that you do. They talk about the one that you don't do.
Do you still see friends from the old days in Belfast?
I don't. No, when I used to come home, up until I suppose I was about 20, I used to always, see 1 or 2 of them. But over the years, we just drifted apart. Most of them moved as well. A lot of them moved out of Belfast, moved abroad. They got away from the troubles, I suppose. So I lost contact with almost all of them. Yeah.
To what extent did the troubles impinge on your life? I mean, I know your great years, I suppose, were really before the trouble started, but after the trouble started, what kind of an impact did that have on you?
It same as most people here, I think. It just saddens me what's going on.
You had a cousin who died. Yeah?
I had a young cousin who got caught. Yeah, who died. He was 17. Got caught in crossfire, which affected the whole family, obviously. But we're only one of a small. It was just a small minority compared to the number of people who have suffered through this madness, which never seems to be going to end. So it just saddens me every time I pick a paper up and read about these lunatics from both sides. It just saddens me that it's going on in my country and with people who I respect and love. And when I travel abroad, people, particularly in America, it saddens me when I sit in places and listen to people talking about something they don't even understand.
What do they say?
They just, the same thing. They just think all the Irish are doing the same thing, running around killing each other for no reason. I mean, I get in so many arguments in bars, and I shouldn't really get involved. But I listen to them talking a load of rubbish about they're all stupid, they're all idiots, the Irish, and I get a little bit upset about it.
You strike me as a thoughtful person. Do you reflect a lot on your own life?
I do, yeah. I sit around. I also reflect, and when you look at the troubles, what would I be doing if I hadn't gone over to England?
What would you have been doing, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Would I have got involved in one way or another with the troubles? It's a little bit frightening, the thought, because I do tend to sit and think about it a hell of a lot, particularly when you, as I said, when you even pick the newspapers up and see, what's happening, and even the latest one, or not the latest one of the latest ones in Manchester as well, which has affected so many of my friends there, who, when you look at and you think, I've got about 6 friends who have businesses in the area where the bomb went off, who've now lost their business. They've lost everything they've saved for years. They've got families to bring up, they've got mortgages to pay, and it's all gone. And things like that really get to me.
What was it like playing for Northern Ireland?
It was good fun, that's for sure. It was a little bit difficult as well, because we didn't have a great side. We had some good players. I mean, Big Pat Jennings, who I roomed with and I made my debut with, and Derek Dugan and people like that were around. But we just didn't have enough good players to be successful, and that was difficult. So I just thought of the Irish trips as a bit of fun, and hopefully once in a while get a few good results, which we did. But The away trips were the good fun, because everyone in the Irish side were, there were so many different characters.
You say the Irish side. In fact, it was the Northern Irish side, and then there was an Irish side. I mean, did you ever think about, whether there should be an Ireland team, or do you think about whether you're Irish or Northern Irish or British or these things?
Well, when anyone asks me what I am, I say Irish. I don't say Northern Irish. I don't say British. I say Irish. And when it comes to football, again, when I do the tour and do the speaking engagements, inevitably I'm asked about an All-Ireland side.
Absolutely.
And I've always said that it should have been an All-Ireland team from the start. We do it in other sports, so why not in football? I think the problem is too many freeloaders out of a job from both sides. I think if you ask the players, that they would all agree that they would like an All-Ireland team. Because to be quite honest, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland are never going to win a tournament when they're separate. If they get together, they've got a chance. Because at any given time, each side has got 4 or 5 class players at least. So if you combine the resources, I think they've got a chance. Unfortunately, in a way, the success they've had in recent years in qualifying for World Cups, both sides, probably make it almost impossible now to happen. But I'd love to see it.
Would you like to be the manager for an All-Ireland side?
I would like to be, too much hassle. I would like to be the manager of any side. I enjoy what I'm doing now. I love coaching. I like working with the kids. And then, since I retired, a lot of my time's been spent traveling abroad and coaching kids all over the world, which I quite enjoy. There's no problem with the kids.
What's the best thing that has happened in your life?
The best thing recently is Alex. And in the past, being at the birth of my son, who's turned into a real nice person.
You didn't pick football?
No, well, football third. Those two are first and second, not in any particular order. Football hurt me in many ways at the end. In the early days, it was the only thing in my life because it was so good. I mean, it was perfect when I started. And I look back on football and think, we won the league championship twice, won a European Cup. I was Footballer of the Year in Europe and England. I was Manchester United's leading goal scorer for 6 years, for someone who wasn't supposed to score goals. So things like that in football are very, very important.
And Pele said you were the greatest ever.
Pele, well, that's the nicest compliment ever. And someone told me that I was actually in New York at a speaking engagement, and another ex-footballer was there, and he had been there at a dinner. And he told me, I didn't know about it, he told me he'd been at the dinner, and Pele was the main speaker. And he said all the Brazilian team were there as guests. And Pele stood up and did a question and answer, and someone asked him who was the greatest player he'd ever seen, and he said me. It's not a bad compliment coming from someone who could play a little bit.
How would you like to be remembered?
As a good husband, a good father, and the best footballer in the world. That will do me.
George Best, thank you.